Welcome to the Wake Up Dad Show, a Daddiest production. This podcast is for you, Dad. This is where we talk about all things related to dadhood, from parenting to relationships to financial and physical health. Your hosts, Dr. Scott and Dr. Evan, are two dads who are committed to helping you. Join our Facebook community by searching Daddiest, where conscious dads connect and collaborate.
Hey dads, welcome to another episode of the Wake Up Dad Show. I'm your co-host, Dr. Ev, and I've got with me Dr. Scotty V. How's it going, Scott?
Going well. Just making my first cup of coffee for the day, which is very strange for me. It's usually on my second or third by now. So I'm pretty excited about this one cup of coffee.
Yeah, coffee.
All right. Yeah. So we have a very exciting podcast for everybody today. We have a special guest, Mr. Bill Scheltema. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Scheltema.
Nice.
Yeah.
Scheltema.
Yeah.
Scheltema. So Bill is a life coach, author, and speaker. And he's got an incredible message. He's got a lot of incredible messages, actually, that are going to be very pertinent to some of the hot topics of being a dad. And, you know, he really sets the foundation with helping dads really create freedom, like set themselves free, set free from ourselves so we can live full and abundant lives. So Bill's insight into who we are as individuals is inspiring and has helped thousands of men and women restore their lives and loves. He has a phrase is, how can we have healthy relationships if we don't know who we are? Just let that settle in for a sec. You know, how many of us really know who we are? And and from there, he disassembles our stories and programs and shows us how to rebuild ourselves into our greatest selves. And that, I love the sound of all of that. I'm super excited. I'm super excited to dive in. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm glad we connected a week ago.
Yes. Yeah, we were on the call for about 30 seconds of you talking, and I was like, okay, we're going to do a podcast with you.
That's awesome. That's
good.
good.
Yeah, because really, you know, what you're saying was very much in alignment with, you know, our thoughts and philosophies and principles and vision of Daddiest. And, you know, I really want to dive in right away. There's a number of topics I really want to smash through and bring this awareness to dads. One of the first ones that we talked about is really, well, actually, I'll let you start because you probably have the best idea on how to create the flow here and take dads through a journey, so to speak, from the main points we talked about. So what would be like the first place that you would want to start with if you're talking to dads, you know, and moving into that area of finding themselves and moving into the intimacy element?
Well, I would start with what we as young boys did not receive enough of. And I know I talked to you about that when we were on the phone. And I call them the 4 pillars of greatness, and they are love, empathy, encouragement, and patience. And I can know from my own experience, and most guys that I've spoken with can attest to the fact that many times they did not feel or they did not receive a level of love or empathy or encouragement or patience from their fathers, you know. And typically men look up to their fathers. They want to impress their dads, and they want to follow in their footsteps. You know, they mimic them, the way they walk, you know, their mannerisms. And that just shows how important that example is to us as we're young boys. And, you know, we can think of, you know, how fathers are sometimes with sons that are promising sports figures and they really push them hard. And when they don't want to do that, you know, they don't want to be the sports kid, you know, they have a passion for music, let's say. It's just not who they are. And so that really creates a dysfunction within the young boy, because then there is a war and battle that he begins to wage throughout his whole life. And we all carry within us a wounded inner child, and we have an ego that likes to prop that inner child up and seeks attention. And we try to get that attention in different forms. but it really comes back to how we view ourselves. And if we don't feel that we have received the level of love or empathy, I call it LEAP. It's like love, empathy, encouragement, and patience. And, that is such an important part in our lives, because I know for myself that it affected myself until I became more awakened and conscious of what was going on in my life. And that wasn't until I was in my 50s. I spent my whole life with a very low level of self-esteem, and I didn't feel that I had worth. And I could trace that right back to how I felt my relationship with my father was, and those aspects that I was not receiving. And that triggered in me a journey into beginning to rediscover who I was, which meant I had to then love myself, have empathy for myself, encourage myself, and have patience for myself. And whether that is having patience for when I screw up and I make mistakes, and then to forgive myself. It means, when I'm being hurt and I'm in pain, to have empathy for myself. And that was something that I really began to step into when I was starting my journey. I was married for 23 years, and then the marriage ended. And when that was done and the dust settled, I sat there and I asked myself, well, what kind of man do I want to be? Who am I? Because now I have an opportunity to recreate myself. And so I looked really hard at who I was. And one thing I know I wanted to do is I wanted to remain teachable, so that I would learn, so that I could grow, and that I didn't have all the answers, but I wanted to find out what the answers were, and I was going to do all that I could to find them out, regardless of how painful they were. And so that led me on this fantastic journey of self-discovery and healing and understanding and insight. It allowed me to write my book, Words, Women, Love. It's allowed me to help men and women, because I've gone through that, and I understand a lot of what I understand what a lot of the source is that I was struggling with throughout my whole life. And I can trace it right back to my youth. And I think most men listening to this, and even maybe both of you, can say, yeah, I can see times in my life when I wasn't receiving what I felt I really needed. The problem is, when men aren't awakened, or they don't really self-reflect, is they just repeat the patterns that they grew up in. And then we just continually see this thing snowballing. And then we end up in this issue that we're in now, where there's such a dysfunction. There's so much toxicity in relationships. And if I go based on a lot of the women that I've coached, it's a real epidemic, and men really need a lot of help. Men, we can use the excuse that they didn't know better, and that's true, but we also, as adult men, need to take responsibility as well. And I think that when a man can recognize that and does take responsibility, he can really then begin to value who he is as a man, and he can really then make the changes that he needs for himself, so that he can be an example, a healthy example to his sons, or if he's a coach or if he's a teacher, to be able to exemplify what a healthy man really looks like, who's in touch with those parts of him that were neglected, most of his life.
So going to the LEAP principle, so love, encouragement, empathy, and patience. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as a boy growing up and wasn't receiving those things from his father, and then flash forward to married now, and doing doing what dad is supposed to do, going and making money, that kind of thing. And, but having this experience of missing those things. And as a result of that, I would imagine, and I can speak like some of this from my own experiences, is when you're not, encouraged, or you don't get that sense that, or you don't know that your dad loves you because he doesn't say it, he doesn't maybe hug you or whatever it may be. There's this kind of like I'm trying to come across the word, but like almost like a void, or maybe I'm not lovable, or I don't know, like what would be some of the things, like words to describe that experience of kind of missing those things? Like what would that man be like if he was to look inside, be like, well, this is what's going on?
Well, before I can answer that, what I wanted to add to that, that void that he's feeling, that pain that he's experiencing as a young boy, he will try to heal that pain. And what will happen is he will attract a mate or a partner that will be often quite often just like the father that they want to receive the healing from. And so you'll find a lot of men will attract the same type of mate into their lives to fill that void, because they haven't recognized the fact that I'm carrying pain and I'm wounded. Men don't typically look at themselves and will be honest enough to say, I'm wounded and I'm hurt and I'm weak. They will try to cover that up, because any emotional expression of those weaknesses or those pains won't be seen as strengths when really they are. But then they fill it with accomplishments, they fill it with financial abundance, or accumulating things to try and fill that, because he hasn't taken a really close look at why he's doing what he's doing. He'll fill it with whatever he can, and sometimes it'll be drugs, it could be alcohol. It's a myriad of things that a man will turn to fill what he feels he's missing.
Okay, that's very clear. And what's the experience that the wife is having? Like, if she's talking, like you said that this is an epidemic and women are experiencing this, what would they say to you as like what their experience would be?
Well, what they'll say to me is, what can I do to change my husband? Or how can I make him talk to me? How can I make him communicate and want to be involved in our relationship or in our marriage? And the only answer I can truly give her is that, well, it's twofold. It's one, you can't make him do anything. And the other one is that most men learn through pain. It's through pain and suffering that men will learn. But that doesn't need to be that way. But that seems to be the par for the course for most of us. I know it was for me for a long time, until I kind of woke up and realized I don't have to learn through suffering and pain. I can learn it and ahead of time, and not have to go through the problems and the struggles that I've gone through. I can learn it now, and I've saved myself time and misery. So when women talk to me, they are crying out for communication and a man that's present in the relationship, and which is missing in a lot of the couples that I've spoken with and talked to, and women that I've spoken with, that men just have a real hard time knowing how to hold space or even be present. And I say that a man can only be as intimate in a relationship as he can be intimate with himself. So if he has a really hard time really being truthful to himself and intimate with his emotions and his thinking, and understanding his triggers and understanding his history to know why he is acting and behaving the way he is, then he will never be able to be present in a relationship. He will never be able to be truly open, because he doesn't know how, because he doesn't know who he is. And so that's what she's seeing. She's just reflecting back the fact that she's with a man that doesn't know who he is, basically.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
She's unable to really connect at that level. We have this saying that in order for women to be intimate, they need to feel connected to.
Yes.
Whereas men use intimacy to feel connected. Which is
True.
a little bit interesting.
Yeah. Well, see, what I've always felt and said is that it's man's responsibility to create safety in a relationship. And in order for him to do that, he's going to want to do that, and he has to know how to do that. And part of knowing how to do that is feeling safe within himself and knowing who he is. And that's usually where the downfall is, because men, for the most part, not all men obviously, but many men struggle with really knowing who they are, and so they can never really be able to create a safe space. And I mean safe space not so much physically, but emotionally for a woman, or psychologically, or even mentally, to create that safety for her, that she can be completely herself. and not be judged, or the opinions don't come flying back on her, and it doesn't get used against her.
That's
Right?
huge.
And, yeah, it is
That's
huge.
huge. It's
Yeah,
huge just to kind of like put a pause there and really
sure.
highlight that. That space of no judgment, her being able to be who she is without it being thrown back in her face.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I can relate to my own journey with my own wife. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had, she's often referred to, my childhood, and things that have shaped me, and creating behaviors in me that maybe she didn't like so much,
Mm.
and um and just really making me think about how I'm reacting and how I'm being and what kind of space am I creating for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because we definitely have, we've had our fair share of arguments over the almost 14 years we've been married, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and that and it's that space where like an argument happens, and if a woman doesn't feel, if a woman feels like her safety is being taken away because of the voices being elevated, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Yeah,
it creates a lot of distrust in the relationship.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like there's a massive disconnection for that person that she wants to be close to and intimate with,
Mm-hmm.
is actually created a pretty significant wall between the two of them as a result of that behavior, which could likely have nothing to do actually with that moment, but a void that's just hasn't been filled from the past, or maybe triggered something, an
Mm-hmm.
insecurity or whatever. And so yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah. Well,
Keep it going.
in the relationship, you'll be triggering each other all the time, because that's part of the journey of growing and becoming who you are and understanding who you are. And that's the purpose of the other person, is to reveal that for you so you can work on yourself. Many times, though, when you don't realize that, is you get triggered, and then you react to it, and you make your decisions based on your trigger, and then you only make things worse. And especially, I know it was the case for myself and my ex, but if men could if men could get a hold of the concept that if they could actually be able to start to hold space when she needs him to hold space for her, if he could learn how to create safety and allow her to begin to feel safe and can begin to trust him, and if he even begins to even with the slightest amount showing that he's beginning to be expressive and communicating, and she sees that he's trying, he will reap levels of intimacy that he will have no idea were even out there, because she is so wanting to connect with her man. She is so wanting to be intimate, and not only physically, but on all other levels, like emotionally, spiritually, mentally. She's seeking that. She wants all of him, not just one part of him. And that's the problem, is most men haven't activated their emotional states, or their spiritual or their mental parts of them, but they've got their physical thing active for sure. Our sex drive is strong, and so that's always active, but we need to work on those other areas. And when we can have those other areas actually alive and flowing in us, and then if we can create that safe space, and we can then begin to speak to her and communicate and be expressive, man, oh man, he will have no idea who this woman is that he has in his life. But she will adore him. She will praise him. She will be all that he was ever looking for in a woman, and get, he will be reaping phenomenal dividends from that if he learns how to do those things for himself, and learns how to create that space for her. Because it's our duty as men to create that space. I really believe that women, as much as they may want to be independent, they need a man that can lead in a healthy way, and they need a man that can create a safe space for her, so she can be completely who she needs to be as a woman. And which is not a scary thing, because a powerful woman is a sensual woman, and a sensual woman is a sexual woman, and all of that just starts to flow and fall into place, and creates this phenomenal relationship.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of the dads listening to this show right now are thinking, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I want. But
Yeah.
for people like me, I think you need to dumb it down a little bit more. So the words that pop out for me are being present with your woman.
Hmm. Yes. You
And
you
those
want
That means listening to her without the headphones in your ears.
it means
I'm
it,
joking.
what it comes down to. I think if Amanda says, okay, I know I need to do this, so how do I do it? What he needs to do is when the opportunity arises and he knows that she wants his attention, he basically needs to physically take her to the couch and sit down facing her, holding her hand or making some kind of physical contact. And then he needs to verbally say, I am here to listen to you. You know, his phone's nowhere near, the phone's off, it's gone. There's just nothing. It's just him and her. And he's saying, he says to her, I know that you want to talk to me and I am going to be present for you. I'm here right now to listen to whatever it is that you need to say, whatever it is you need to vent, whatever emotion you need to express to me. I am here. This is your time and I want to hold this space for you. And I'm just learning how to do this. And I want to do this for you because I care for you and I love you. And I haven't done it in the past, but I want to change and I want to do that now. So I'm telling you this because I want you to know that this is what I want as well. So I think we need to articulate that to the women in our lives so that they realize that, because we may not, we may do it and she may not realize that that's what our intent is. They need to know our intent in that case. And I think if you can separate the devices from our hands or our pockets and then go to a zone in the house where you can sit down quietly and then you let her know, you express that, you know, this is for her, and you have some kind of physical contact so that she's aware that you're there and you're aware that she's there and you're looking at
Perfect.
her and you're looking
Yeah.
at her and you're not taking your eyes off her.
I think that's so key, dads out there listening, is don't do it in your head and think that you're doing a good job, because she might not have a clue that you're trying to even do it, right? So
Yeah.
express, just like you said. That's awesome. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can do that too. Like even if you're driving, you know, always make physical contact so that she knows you're there, and tell her like that. And that's a good thing for men to learn. If they don't know how to express or communicate, start with something simple like that. Just say, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. You know, that's simple. You know, that's a pretty easy thing for a guy to do. You know, this is why I'm doing it. And this is, you know, yeah, this is why I'm doing it. And this is what I'm doing. So yeah, I think that's really important. And then it's an easy thing to do.
Cool.
We still,
Can I
Love it.
can I
yeah, I'm
can
here.
I circle back? Can I circle
Yep.
back a little bit as well? Back to those 4 pillars again: love, him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, quite often we're talking about dads here, so a relationship potentially with our fathers, not getting that, and having, we all have some type of wounded inner child.
Yep.
And so then you mentioned about, you know, getting through this and moving forward and healing this. I'm wondering, there's lots of dads in the group here that have many different experiences with their dads, whether it was a positive one or not such a good one, dads who are still here, dads who are no longer with us.
Yeah.
Is that journey of healing that wounded child an inner journey? Is it something that does it need to involve the actual father, or is it something that's internal, or both, depending on the person? Can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. It's definitely a personal journey, and it's not one you can really take along with you, but there will be opportunities when you can have that discussion with the father, where you can express, you know, whether it's forgiveness, or you can express, you know, what you're doing in your life and what you've come to understand. If, you know, the father is willing to, of course, and if he's even alive. But otherwise, it's really a personal journey. And because when you're in the midst of it and you're going through it, you want to stay focused on that, and you don't want to be derailed either, right? And the thing with the journey is no one will understand what's going on with you because you're going to be changing. You'll be becoming an awakened man. You'll be becoming aware and more conscious, and that will already right there will begin to create a gulf with most of the people that you know, because you're changing. And if they're not changing, I know that's from my own experience that I lost most of my friends and some of my family because I changed so much from my journey that there was no longer that type of a connection where I could just, communicate that with them, because they didn't understand what I was doing or what I was going through. And then I know for myself, I realized, this is really, I'm doing this all on my own. I have nobody at the time. There's no one I could talk to or reach out to. So it's like I come to the realization that I'm doing this by myself. And because nobody would really understand what I was talking about, and when I talk, because what happens then too is then it starts to reveal, it starts to shed the light on other people, right? And it starts to create that unease of you're shedding light on the imperfections of other people just by your own actions and by your own life and by your own speaking. How you speak and the things that you're doing are going to go against the ego of everyone else, because what you're doing is you're rising in love and empathy for yourself, and that's automatically, you don't even have to try, your ego will begin to shed automatically, because the two can't coexist. So as you rise in love and love for yourself initially, then that starts to then move outwards, and that you start to express this new level of love outward, because you now can begin to love yourself, you accept yourself, you've begun to heal, you have empathy for yourself, and you start to walk completely different on this earth. You really do. And it's amazing the things that begin to happen in your life. Your life just really starts to change. But what that does is sheds a light in the darkness, right? And so people that are still in the dark aren't going to like that, because then they start to become exposed. And so that's why it becomes a personal journey.
Have you heard of tall poppy syndrome? It's a thing over here in Australia.
I've not heard of that, no.
Have you heard of it, Ev?
Sorry, what was it?
Tall poppy syndrome.
No.
Well, essentially, it's what you just described. So it's quite an interesting topic. I never heard of it either before I came over here. But essentially, what it means is, say you in your life start to become, more enlightened, more successful, whatever the case might be. A lot of times, the people in your life, they love you the way you are. Mm-hmm. And they can't necessarily accept those changes. And so they want to actually drag you back down to the person you've always been, because that's the person they've always known.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just a little tidbit of info there. It's called tall poppy syndrome over here.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. I've seen that often, when I've spoken with people. I remember a woman I was coaching. She was in a narcissistic relationship for 4 years. And she was trying to break free, but the people around her wouldn't. It was like they were holding her back. And, there was fear. She was carrying fear as well, because she didn't know what would happen if she'd lost all her friends, because in order for her to go the way that she wanted to go, which was to get out of this relationship, she would lose all of her friends. And so she was stepping into the unknown, and it was very fearful for her. And so what you're saying is absolutely true. It does. People want to keep you where they know you. Where they can control you. I just did a video 2 days ago about do you see yourself as beautiful? Because what it boils down to is a lot of times we look for other people to be approved of, or to feel approval, or to dictate who we are. And if we let them, that's one side of the war. But then within ourselves, we don't even accept ourselves or allow ourselves to really step into our true nature. And so we're fighting this battle inside, internally, and outwardly. And it's a losing battle until we decide that this is who I'm going to be. This is the path. I need to stay on this path. Otherwise, I'm going to lose myself. And, whatever comes will come. Whoever is not in my life will not be in my life, because of, the big changes that will be taking place. And so it just creates this, the gap just keeps getting wider and wider. So to answer the question, yes, it is a personal journey, I would say, primarily.
Yeah, and I think it's a really cool sort of tangent that we went on there. Realize you need to potentially let go of some people in your life as you go through these journeys and become a different person, right? I mean, well, or variations of who you are, depending on how you want to think about that. But some people might be dragging you back in the idea of that, you know, you're an accumulation of the top 5 people that you hang out with for the most part. And if you have a look at those 5 people and they aren't who you want to be or where you want to go, then it may be time to make a change.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, the thing too with that, you know, the story is never done, right? I mean, everyone's on their own journey, and down the road, the people that you lost, you know, they may go through their own path, and they'll end up coming back into your lives, right? So you never know down the road what life will bring you. But you do need to be true to yourself in your journey, or else you'll never get to that fulfillment and that place of abundance, of love and life in yourself, unless you do that.
So, question. So you've got a guy, a guy who's, let's say, he just knows that he's not in that place where he's creating that, you know, he's not able to be really truly present. The intimacy that he's aiming for in his relationship is purely physical. All the other elements, he's just not even like, whatever. It's not on his radar. Maybe he's got even an addiction, you know, some way that he's trying to like fill this void and just like kind of numb the pain or whatever it may be, where he's got an explosive emotional state. Maybe he has temper problems, whatever. I see a lot of this, and we do a lot of surfing on the internet and dad groups and stuff like that. And so we see a lot of these things, you know, addictions, problems with anger. You know, the focus is all about on the physical intimacy, and if that's not there, then they're failure. And then, you know, and we're going into this like totally getting this, that, you know, it's necessary for us to really get to know ourselves and to heal ourselves and that sort of thing. You know, the question comes to me is like, how does somebody go about doing that, especially if they're doing it on their own? How do they even know that they're navigating through this? Like, what would you like? I mean, this is a tough question, I think. Do you have any answer?
Well, if a guy's at that place in his life, if he's, you know, dealing with anger or addictions and he's frustrated, and if he's getting close to, he has to hit rock bottom, obviously. You know, they talk about the dark night of the soul, where you go through the darkest time in your life and then, you know, you're broken. Then you come to a point where you start to ask questions. It started that way with me. It's like I wanted to understand, and it's like I just began to ask myself questions. It was as simple as that. You know, why am I always angry, or why do I have such a level of low self-esteem? Where is that coming from? Or why does this always get me angry when this person does this? And I see it happening over and over. So, and that's the first step to self-reflection and self-realization, because then when you ask yourself these questions and you start to look for the answer, then you start to trace back in your life, and then all of a sudden you get to a point in your life, you go, aha, something happened when I was young that hurt me, and it made me angry, or I was in pain and I shut down. And you go, and then you can start going forward from there and see, okay, I did that again in this relationship, and I did it in this relationship, and I was like this in school and this way at work. And you can then, when you can find the source, then it becomes, okay, now I know what my next step is. I need to decide to forgive myself or forgive whoever I need to forgive, and then I can begin to heal. But it really starts with, you know, starting with the question, the why.
Yeah, I like that. We talk a lot about taking inventory. taking inventory. Another way we put it is taking our head out of our own ass.
Yeah.
We use that expression a lot. Yeah, 'cause, I mean, I think there's a lot of that going on. Where the questions aren't being asked. Just living in a very automatic life. And not really asking those questions. And just to kind of throw this out there, rock bottom can mean a whole lot of different things. You're right. Like, rock bottom doesn't mean you're necessarily divorced. It doesn't mean that, you're, and like, there's no like, delineation that it's like, oh, that's rock bottom right there. I can see it. It can just happen where you might have an argument, with your wife, or there may be a long, period of disconnection or whatever, to that point that it's just so painful for you at that moment that it's like you either ask yourself some questions, like take your head out of your ass, ask yourself some real questions about what is actually going on here, but not pointing fingers at everybody else around you, but actually looking inside and saying, what about me is creating this? What is it? What am I doing? And starting to be a little bit more responsible. And, but at the same time, like you said, looking at, where perhaps that trigger may have came from. Forgiveness is a really big one. Absolutely. So hope this is coming together for some of the dads on this show. Certainly you're putting it together very well.
One thing I've also come to realize, as far as anger issues and things like that, if we take a scenario of a man and a woman, they're arguing, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, let's say, and if he cannot deal with the confrontation of the argument and in an emotional way, and if he can't work through the argument through his mental abilities, all he has left with is his physical. And when a man does not understand his emotions and he does not know his mental state or the triggers and the reasons why he thinks the way he thinks or behaves the way he behaves, then all he has left is his physical, which could end up being slamming his fist on the table or throwing a cup at the door, or storming out of the house, slamming the door and going in the car and ripping a trail of rubber down the street. Right? That's all he has. That's his only last recourse of how to deal with this altercation, because he hasn't been equipped and he hasn't learned how to navigate a confrontation with someone that he loves, that he's emotionally connected to, because his emotions are not mature. He hasn't matured his emotions. He's still immature in his emotions, and his thinking gets shut down because the ego starts to rise, because he'll want to be right. We want to be right all the time as men. That's our ego is built that way in us, that we need to be right. And so when we can't be right, then we go to the next thing. If we can't be right there, we go to the next thing, and it usually ends up being the physical. And in some men, it ends up becoming domestic abuse. So and that's something that I think is real important, that we need to really understand, is that we need to know who we are as emotional men, and we need to recognize that we are emotional. We are men with emotions, and that's not weakness. We are men that have thoughts. Good, bad, or ugly, doesn't matter, but we need to be able to be responsible for our thoughts and how we articulate them. And then the next step would be to, understand our physical being and how we walk and talk and motivate throughout the day when we're in situations at work or at home. Because if we don't, you'll never end up having a good resolution.
I've heard the phrase something along the lines of, a truly strong man is one who can can, what's the word, who has almost like a handle on his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's able to be level-headed and you know, and to enter into a difficult conversation and you know, be able to experience the emotion, but not let the emotion change its behavior and it becoming, you know, and really turn that conversation into something that is destructive.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't say anything. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you look at it this way. A guy has a woman in his life and they have an argument and she starts to go off the rails or she's really being emotionally expressive and he's being triggered. But he's being triggered not necessarily because of what she's doing in that moment, but he's being triggered because of a relationship before where the same thing happened. Or the relationship before that where the same thing happened. And before that one, right? And so there's this pattern of relationships where the arguments never work out right, and so he's being triggered by past experiences, and now he's confronted with this again. And if he does not realize that these are triggers and that's all that they are, and that he can still hold space and keep his tongue and just breathe and let her just let her be, because if he can allow that to take place and let her just vent and do whatever it happens to be, you know, express how it comes out, that will actually be helpful and healing to her, because then she will feel safe, because she knows that, okay, I can lose myself and I can go crazy, I can be emotional, I can be, you know, just a mess, and he's actually sticking around, he's holding space for me, he's not lashing back out at me, and then she begins to feel safe. And then eventually that will start to wane, it will start to go away. But the problem is we want to be right, and we get triggered, and we have to have our say in the argument, and we have to, you know, we have to fix it, we have to analyze it, we have to do all this stuff, and then it just, you know, we lose it. We've just lost it, right? So, totally. And that's why it's really important to understand, you know, the triggers and our emotions, because we will be triggered every single time. And if we can be self-aware that, okay, I'm being triggered right now, don't react, just let her speak, just breathe. Look at her, hold space. Just shut up, don't say anything, just hold space. If we can do that consistently, that will slowly go away, and she will then become a better woman. No, I won't say better woman. She'll be, she will begin to heal herself, and she will feel safe with you, and that will change the dynamic of the relationship. And then it can start to become a healthy relationship. Yeah. And then after that, then you can have the discussion is, you had this breakdown, and I just stood there and I listened, I took it, and, I want to tell you what was going on with me. This is what was happening inside of me. What you were saying was triggering me. What you were saying was making me angry. But I know that I want to change, and I know that I have to hold space for you. I want to hold space for you, but this is what was going on inside of me. But I do know that my triggers weren't necessarily directly because of you, but because of my past experiences and other relationships. And, if we can learn to just have those simple back and forth exchanges of saying, this is what I was feeling when you were doing this, this is how I felt after, right? After the fact of having that. I think that is so important to always check in on the relationship and talk about, what I was feeling about something you did or didn't do.
And so is this what you do as a coach? Do you help men and women basically what we just talked about here, but just in a one-on-one situation?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do that. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's I think, a great take home is like, dads, if this is resonating with you, but just sort of like, man, this sounds really good. This makes a lot of sense, but I just don't know how to get started. I don't know what to do. And this is where they can get a hold of you. Like, we're going to have the information in our show notes. And you've got a great YouTube channel. And so, dads, make sure to reach out. If this is something that resonates with you, reach out and touch base, because this is where it starts.
Yeah. And the other bit of advice I would give men when you're in your bedroom and you can sense that there's going to be an argument, you take the argument out of the bedroom, you go someplace else, and you keep the bedroom an anger-free or an argument-free zone, because for women, they will connect everything, as you know, and emotions and events that take place, they will remember, that will affect her level of intimacy with you. And if the bedroom reminds her of the last time you guys had an argument and there was like a, it almost became a fisticuffs, she's going to remember that, and that'll be a connection for her, and you don't want that. And so I tell men and women, I say, if you know that you're gonna have to have an argument, or you're gonna have a discussion or talk, and it's gonna get a little bit dicey, you get out of that room. You want to make that room, you want to sanctify that room for for lovemaking, for reconnecting and being passionate with each other. You don't want to go into that room and remember, oh yeah, that's where I got real mad and I threw the pillow or I did whatever. You want to keep that room special. And so that's the other piece of advice I give couples too.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. So, our time has gone over as usual. We get such good guests on here. We just want to keep going. So I reckon for sure.
Well, I don't mind. I'll come back. I will.
That's what I was going to say. Back on the show, absolutely.
Yeah. And then we can pick we can pick like a specific subject and just kind of delve into the one, instead of we were covering an awful lot of territory tonight. So
definitely. I loved it.
Yeah. So that was great.
Lots of great takeaways.
Lots of great takeaways. And, there's so many, just going through, as I said, like I get involved in a lot of conversations and read what dads are going through and so on. And I'm just like, literally these guys, the comments and so on, they're like flashing through my mind, that this guy dealing with this, guy dealing with this. There's such a need. And, coaching is so important. It definitely puts the stamp on that that a person is on the path to growth, self-realization, wanting to improve themselves when they have a coach. They're putting their energy and their focus into a result. So somebody who wants to improve their relationship, definitely somebody who's a relationship. I mean, what would you call? Would you call it relationship coaching? Would that be?
Yeah, I call it relationship. Yeah, I call it relationship coaching. I used to call myself a life coach, but I've come to realize for myself that, I have a relationship with myself that I have to work on all the time. Not only, the ones that I'm in out there, like my, family, friends, women or dating or whatever. But the one that I have with myself is the most important one, because if that one is not intact, if it's not healthy, then I can't really be that healthy in any of the other ones, or at least only to the degree that I'm as healthy with myself. And so that's why I call myself a relationship coach, because, I'm relating to myself, it's really important.
Yeah. It's massive. I'm like chuckling to myself. This one story I got to share with you guys before we end it.
Sure.
So, through this journey of Scott and I with Daddius and the podcast, I mean, we're absorbing a tremendous amount of of information, and and I'm applying it in my life, and we're both on a journey. Scott and I, we're on a journey. It's not like we're on the top of the mountain looking down and bestowing our wisdom and everything. We're in this game together with everybody else, and so I was having this discussion with my wife, and so one of those things that you're saying is like holding the space, and I think when you can hold the space and breathe, suddenly you become a lot more aware of what she's actually saying, and rather than thinking about what you're going to say, to kind of take it to the next level, so to be right or whatever it may be. And so I was listening, and I was really trying to understand what she was saying, because there was a disconnection. I wasn't getting it. She's getting a bit frustrated, because it's like an old pattern where we have an argument that would escalate or whatever, and But I was really like, no, I'm not going to ask her some questions, try to figure out what this was. And she said something, and I got it. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And she was like going to take it up a notch. And she's like, what?
Oh, that's
And I
awesome.
was like, oh, you're so right on that. I said, no, you're really right. And she was like, like, it was like, just, you know, you could see the firing of the brain, and she wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
And then I kind of went on to be like, oh, I totally get what you're saying, and that's, you know, I can see that point. Whereas if I hadn't done this work and asked, you know, these questions about myself and how am I behaving in a conversation like that, that would have never happened. And as a result, you know, I would say, like, you know, I think the level of connection and the sense of safety that we have together has just exploded. And she's doing things now that really I don't remember her ever doing. You know, and it's just little things, guys. It's like, you know, I'll be doing the dishes and she just puts her kind of like her arms around me and just kind of embraces me for 5 or 10 seconds. Like those moments like that, where it's like, you know that she feels safe with you. She feels connected with you. She's, you know, that feminine side is coming out.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, so it's just like, you just know you're on the right track. Definitely you're not on the right track if there's doors being slammed and people are walking out the doors and stuff like that. Start to ask some questions. Start to ask some real questions. Get your head of your ass. And you know, and you know, really consider working with someone like Bill for sure. So Bill, we want to thank you for being here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that if men could realize that, though it may not seem like intimacy, every interaction with the woman in your life is intimacy and does lead to intimacy. Because when she's emotional, she's being intimate. There's no doubt about that. She's being intimate.
True.
If we realize that, you know, that can really help us to, you know, recognizing something as simple as that.
Yeah,
that's all. I just wanted to add that.
that was a I can totally see that. You know, if she's in that place where she's allowing herself to feel emotions in front of you, that's a good sign. You know, assuming that you know, she's connecting with like the full spectrum of emotions, not just like yelling at you, but I mean, like if she's able to experience sadness, you know, in front of you, or excitement in front of you, and that full, you know, it's, what do we say, Scott? It's like the feminine energy is like the wind. Can blow in many different directions in a 5-minute period. And so can those emotions. And we're kind of like, we're the rock and the wind's kind of blowing around the rock. You know, and we got to be able to observe those and really help her feel like she can do that. Then you'll catch the wind that you want sometimes to catch. The one that you really like to catch. Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that was a lot of fun, Bill. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Evan. Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excited to have you back.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can do that again and help men and get them on the right path and healed and becoming epic men.
Absolutely. We will do so. Until next time, Dad. See you on the Daddiest page. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Remember, join our Facebook community, Daddiest, where conscious dads connect and collaborate.